Most people today know about kefir. They know that it's some sort of probiotic drink and that you're supposed to drink it for better gut health. But what even is kefir? How is kefir made? And where did kefir come from? How is kefir able to substantially improve the life and health of those who drink it? And how exactly does it work in the body? These questions, among many others, are what I'm determined to look into and answer in this little series about kefir. In order to understand this mysteriously fermented beverage, it may be useful to first take a look at the history and the legends surrounding it. Kefir is widely known today and is consumed in many countries throughout the world. But for many centuries it was actually a closely guarded secret of the people living in the northern Caucasus mountain region in Russia. The people who live in this region are actually known for their long lifespans, and they have one of the highest proportion of centenarians in the world, which is just a fancy way of saying they have a lot of people who turn 100 years old. Throughout most of recorded history, kefir has remained a dietary staple in this region. The traditional way of making kefir in this region was by combining fresh milk with kefir grains inside of a goatskin bag. The bag filled with milk and kefir grains would then be hung in the doorway of the house so that sunshine would hit it throughout the day. Every time someone walked through the doorway, they would hit the bag to keep the fermentation going. Every time someone drank the kefir from the bag, they would immediately put back milk to keep the kefir grains in a continual process of fermentation. As for how the people in this region actually got the kefir grains, the answers are not so clear, because no one really seems to know where kefir grains came from, and no one even knows how to make them. Science has tried to replicate kefir grains for years, but they have remained unsuccessful. This means that when you choose to buy kefir grains, you are buying original grains from the Caucasus Mountains, or at least an offshoot of that. Because as kefir grains ferment milk, they slowly get bigger and more plentiful. And so far, this is our only option to create more kefir grains. One of the most ancient legends about kefir use dates back to the time of Abraham. According to ancient scrolls which were found in Turkey, the patriarch Abraham actually credited his long life to the use of kefir. It has even been said that the manna which fell from the sky to feed the children of Israel was actually kefir grains. And another legend, also originating from Turkey, is that kefir was actually given to Noah from an angel in order to sustain him. Marco Polo also mentioned kefir in the chronicles of his travels to the east. As you might hear, the legends and stories about kefir are plentiful. But in terms of provable history, we are constantly brought back to the Caucasus Mountains. As mentioned before, the people in the Caucasus Mountains have been drinking kefir for thousands of years. In this region, kefir grains are actually known by the name grains of the prophet. The traditional legend here about the origin of the kefir grains is that the Prophet Muhammad gifted the kefir grains to the Orthodox Christians in this region. Legend has it that the Prophet Muhammad claimed that the grains were a gift from Allah. He then gave the kefir grains to the people and taught them how to make kefir. The grains of the Prophet were guarded carefully in this region, because it was believed that if they got into the wrong hands or got to the wrong people, they would lose their magic strength. Therefore the kefir grains and methods for making kefir were kept secret by the people in the Caucasus Mountains for many generations. Actually, owning kefir grains was equated with wealth in this region. So since kefir was a closely guarded secret of the people in the Caucasus Mountains, how did it become more widely known? Well, this is where the story of kefir gets even more interesting and wild. It all started with the Russian doctor, Dr. Ilya Ilyich Mechnikov. In the early 1900s, Mechnikov became fascinated by the people in the Caucasus Mountains. He wanted to know the cause for their exceptional longevity, and how they lived, and why they lived so long. Mechnikov came to the conclusion that soured milk, including kefir, was one of the keys to longevity and well-being for these people. So Mechnikov published his book called The Prolongation of Life in 1907. And the All-Russian Physician Society became fascinated by this drink called kefir he wrote about in this book. And they became determined to get their hands on this kefir in order to use it as a medicinal treatment for their patients. So the All-Russian Physician Society sent out two brothers from Moscow Dairy to the Caucasus Mountains in order to obtain the grains from the tribes living there. So the two brothers came up with a plan in order to obtain the Kefir grains from the tribe. They would send a beautiful woman to the prince of the tribe, and she would use her beauty and charm to obtain the Kefir grains from the prince. The woman that the brothers chose for this important mission was an employee of theirs called Irina Sarakchova. Actually, this plan worked somewhat, because Irina succeeded in attracting the interest of the prince, but he refused to give her any Kefir grains. Irina saw the mission as failed and therefore departed from the tribe, but tribesmen were sent to capture her with the intention of forcing her to marry the prince. The Blandov brothers then started a rescue mission to save Irina before the forced marriage was supposed to take place. Irina was saved, and the prince was ordered to pay retribution to Irina by the Russian government. The prince offered Irina gold and jewels, but Irina refused. There was only one way she could be compensated for what she had endured, and that was with Kefir grains. So the prince was ordered to give Irina 10 pounds of Kefir grains, and finally the Blandov brothers had achieved their mission. Once the Blandov brothers had the milk Kefir grains, they began making Kefir for the All-Russian Physician Society. Kefir quickly started to be used in Russian hospitals to treat a wide variety of conditions, including digestive disorders, cancer, atherosclerosis, tuberculosis, and even today Kefir is routinely used for hospital patients, including infants in Eastern European hospitals. In 1973, the Minister of the Food Industry of the Soviet Union sent a letter to 85-year-old Irina thanking her for bringing Kefir to the Russian people. Kefir was introduced to the Western world by the 1960s, and recently Kefir has become a much sought-after food with a rapidly growing global market. Today, many health-conscious consumers use Kefir grains at home to easily produce their own milk Kefir. This continues to be the far superior option of consuming Kefir, if you ask me, and here's why. As I've mentioned before in this video, Kefir grains are so unique that scientists can't duplicate them. Even though they know exactly what's in Kefir grains, they can't make the real thing. Scientists today have all the ability and technology in the world. They can alter molecules, they can change your genome, they can make drugs, but they can't make Kefir grains, no matter how hard they try. Kefir seems to have been around since time began, but it's only recently that the Western world has opened their eyes to the magical properties of Kefir. This creates a big market and big profits to be made to whoever is able to make large amounts of Kefir. Most of the commercially prepared Kefir on the market today is made with direct set powdered Kefir cultures. These powdered cultures contain considerably fewer probiotic strains than Kefir grains, but they produce a more consistent commercial product that can be sold for profit. That's why, in my opinion, that the best Kefir you can drink is the one you make yourself. As for how to make this magical drink, look out for my next video.